I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
What's going on, Clone Wars fans? We have just completed the second third of Season 7. We're having Episode 8 together again. I'm Ryan Nilsson. I am joined by my illustrious co-host. She is an author, a massive Ahsoka Tano fan, and she just got the coolest pop figure ever with Dark Rey. It's Rachel Goodman. How are you doing, Rachel Goodman?
Hey, I'm doing really well, and I'm just gonna flaunt my Dark Rey.
Yo, and a bit,
I know.
A happy birthday to Daisy Ridley, whose birthday it is today.
Yes, happy birthday to her. Rey is one of my favorite characters, so I am very excited.
Well, another one of our favorite characters is Ahsoka Tano, and we just completed the second storyline arc. I feel like the first 4 episodes were all focused around the Bad Batch and Anakin. The second 4 was Ahsoka, Rafa, and Trace, and we just finished that storyline with the Pikes getting spice. I want to get your overall thoughts on this episode.
So here's my thing. I love that we're finally getting to Darth Maul, and that we're going where this is going to go for the finale of the season. I do feel like I don't want to say wasted, because I have been enjoying Trace and Rafa, and I really like them as characters. But I feel like we could have seen some of this move a little more quickly, and we could have gotten to the meat of the season a little more quickly, especially since this is the last season we're going to get of Clone Wars. So I'm a little upset that this might be it, and that we only have 4 more episodes left. I think that's more of just me as a fan being sad that we only have 4 more episodes.
Oh, so like more of sad about how they ended the Trace and Rafa storyline? Is that what you're saying?
More sad that we spent so much time with them with this Pyke and Spice running storyline.
Oh, you thought it could be a little shorter?
I thought it could have been shorter. I thought that we could have gotten to the final arc with whatever they're going to do with Darth Maul a little more quickly, especially if we're going to see her interact with Anakin again at all, which I know your prediction is that we won't. I'm hoping that it does happen, at least on some level.
I predict they won't in person, but no,
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I feel similar to you. I think that this storyline was pretty long. I actually saw some people this week complaining, saying it was like they were filler episodes, which I disagree. I don't think they were filler episodes, but it was a longer storyline. I think my issue with this episode in particular, and I'll just go into my overall thoughts. I did like this episode, and I got really excited about what it set up. And I hate just generalizing episodes of TV as like, oh, it was just a setup episode. But for me, the best part of this was what it set up. And I thought the conclusion of the storyline on paper was good. But when I saw it play out, I thought it was a little sloppy and not as quote-unquote believable as the other 3. Because what I really admired about the other 3 episodes, and you can watch our after shows, again, every Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, they're very believable, and I actually bought this relationship between all 3 of these characters, and I really like this Rafa Trace. And we'll get into one of my biggest issues in a few seconds, but just to set the table real quick, guys, we're going to be talking about just how the imprisonment on top, the deal that Ahsoka cuts for Trace and Rafa, the Pikes' lives at stake, and their ties to Darth Maul, as well as Rafa and Trace getting the spice, Ahsoka and Bo KAtan and Maul, kind of setting all that up at the end, as well as some really exciting news we got for you later, and we're going to be giving our predictions for the rest of Season 7. So stay tuned for that, and if you're in the chat, please comment down below and give us a rating on iTunes. We will give you a shout-out on air. Again, Ryan Nilsson, Rachel Goodman, give us a shout-out on iTunes. All right, Rachel, got to get your thoughts on just right where we pick up from last week. They're still in prison, and then they cut a deal with the Pikes. What'd you think?
So, okay, here's my thing. First of all, you know how I was saying last episode that it kind of annoys me when a character should be smarter and they dumb them down?
Here we go.
So Trace's reaction, Trace not figuring this out right away, especially after they had this conversation in the cell of how they should trust her.
Me.
Yes, and then Ahsoka drops the word, 2 words, trust me, when she's cutting the deal, and she stresses it, and Trace doesn't get it. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that Trace wouldn't get that. She's too smart. Fortunately, I would have like lost my mind if Rafa didn't get it either. And at first, I thought they were going with both of that, and like with both characters not getting it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we see that Rafa does get it. Now, here's the thing, though: Trace should have gotten it.
Yeah, come on. She's like, come on, Trace. What are you
But we don't
doing? You're
even-
not seeing it.
We don't even have any family. What is she doing? Why would she say that? Duh.
Yeah, the most naive. That was kind of brutal, honestly. That I and I think they could have achieved a similar mindset for Trace in those moments, but the dialogue just made her seem like an imbecile. I even had problems with Rafa prior to those scenes because we ended last week's episode with her going, God, I never should have took this job. Like coming to a realization. And that to me was an actual arc of that character of like, it's hard, cognitive dissonance. It's hard to admit you're wrong. And she at the end there was like, guys, I blew it. That for me was a little moment of growth for this character. We opened this episode with, this is your fault. This is actually your fault. Man, like I can't believe you dropped the spice. I'm like, what happened between those few seconds? Because that is a complete flip as to what she was saying at the end of last week.
And Rafa, it wasn't even true what she was saying. Oh, well, Ahsoka, you made her drop the spice. No, Ahsoka did not make her drop the spice. Ahsoka was not suggesting that. But even more, like, I will say I agree with you completely on that. I do appreciate that kind of going along from last week. Rafa did decide that she was going to go back and try to break Ahsoka out of jail. So I do like that. I do like that we kind of, even though we lost some of the continuity with the growth, we kind of regained some of it when Rafa decided she was going to go back and help. And I think that kind of going off what you were saying too with Trace, it might have been better instead of Trace not getting it at all and saying, oh, well, why would Ahsoka betray us? I think that we could have used that scene with Rafa and Trace to show a different arc with Trace.
Ooh.
And to show something else with her along the lines of not necessarily that she couldn't trust Ahsoka, but maybe just, the hurt of losing somebody or the hurt of once again being torn away from somebody would have been stronger than, oh, I can't believe Ahsoka would do this to us.
Yeah, it was.
She dropped a major hint.
And it was a great plan. I that was another thing I just had a little bit of a hard time believing, but they at the end they kind of got away with it. Just her being able to cut this deal. At first, I'm like, what? Why would they even agree to this? But like, let these two go, and if they don't come back with it, I'll just tell them where your families are, and you'll have me. And then you hear the Pikes say, our lives are as much at stake as theirs. So then I was like, okay, that makes sense. I can see they're willing to risk anything to get this spice. So Rafa and Trace go on a mission to get spice, and they go back to that planet. While Ahsoka tries to escape by herself there, and just finishing out this this Rafa Trace storyline real quick. Maybe my biggest qualm with the episode was how quote unquote easy it was to get this spice. Like I thought it was great when we got that guard who was like really intimidating at the end, but I just couldn't believe how like I felt the stakes were so high when they got that original spice, and you just feel at every corner like something could go wrong and they could mess up and get killed, and there were guns everywhere, and it's just like, wow, there was really no immediate danger until the manager came by, and they loaded 3 carts of spice onto the ship from pure intimidation. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I didn't buy that either. I agree with you. I think that the amount of tension that we had when they first got the spice compared to this, I understand. This is also supposed to be meant for kids as well.
You're right.
And so I'm trying to keep that in mind. And so that instead of getting too critical of this moment, but I felt like that scene with Rafa, Trace, and the manager, and the 2 goons, I guess we'll call them, when they were trying to steal the spice to make it look like they were bringing spice back. I just felt like that entire scene was kind of geared toward, one, making it a lighter moment, in contrast to what was going on with Ahsoka. But then two, that was kind of, I feel like it was kind of written for kids that are watching this, as like a, comical moment. Cause yeah, but I didn't buy that either.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but that is the other thing where I it just wasn't as consistent a tone that they've had this season, and I totally hear you. Everything you just said is completely valid. I think I was just a little shocked. I expected more of a challenge for Trace and Rafa, and I
Yeah.
expected something maybe that they had learned from Ahsoka to come into play with them getting the spice, but they just rob the spice from them, and they kill a guy. So I was just kind of like, all right, and then they get it, they bring it back, and meanwhile Ahsoka is escaping and sees a hologram of Darth Maul talking to the Pikes, and she realized, okay, that's why their lives are at stake. And she immediately gets this like, I want to know where he is. He's at Mandalore, and we get that clip that was the teaser. Thoughts on Ahsoka realizing that Maul has such a big, he's in such command of a place like Mandalore that's now all coming to a head for her.
So, and this is where you had said something earlier about wishing that we could have gotten to the action. Like, we're seeing how it was written versus how it played out. You thought that how it played out did not hold up to how it had been written.
Right.
And I know that when you and I were talking earlier in the week, we both watched the preview.
That's right.
And to me, the preview made this moment look bigger and better than what we actually got. And so my thing is that I do appreciate that we now have Maul and that we're moving in a direction where there's going to be some major action happening. But I think that we should have gotten there quicker. And I wouldn't call this episode a filler.
Yeah.
But I would say that if they're going to make it that easy for Trace and Rafa to get the spice, they could have sped through that a little bit faster, and they could have gotten to Maul quicker and then maybe done a little bit more. I was expecting when the Pikes said, oh, you're a Jedi, we're going to see, we'll see what the council says about this, or something along those lines. I thought they were going to, maybe threaten to kill her, but also because they thought that she was sent from the council, I thought that they were going to reach out to the council and be like, we have one of yours, we're going to kill her unless ...
Or
That's where
even,
I thought they were
or how about
going.
this? Reach out to Maul.
Yeah.
Someone. I agree. That would have been interesting. That's a really great point.
Or both.
Both. Yeah.
Now, I do want to say this. The Pikes, they made a comment along the line of, he knows, he always knows. And obviously they were referring to Maul. I almost wondered I wondered for a second if it was not Maul they were referring to. But obviously it was Maul, and it would have made more sense if, one, it made the Pikes look like they are not necessarily that bad, that they are just they're not good, but it makes them feel more like gray area characters.
Yeah.
But also that a lot of what they're doing right now is being, forced upon them by Maul.
I agree. For a second there, I thought Emperor Palpatine. Like, are we?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
That connection here, and then Maul.
Because
I was
he
like,
always
of course.
knows.
Yeah. But you're right that phrase "always knows" made me think of him. I agree with everything you said. I think it could have been a little quicker in hindsight. I do admire, though, not a slow burn, but I do admire a build up. I did care about Rafa. I cared about Trace, and it really got to care about Ahsoka with the 3 episodes prior to this. And this one was a nice little end to that storyline. I just felt like it was really setting up what we're gonna get for the next 4, more than focus on completing these 4. And and hey, you know what? It happens, and it wasn't like it was terrible. I still think this is a good episode. Just to close it out, one of the most exciting things, the Mandalorians, where you get shots of them, Bo KAtan, and they're like, keep track of the Jedi. We know these 2 are leaving. Keep track of her. And at the end, they fly back to the hangar of Coruscant, and I guess they followed them. They did.
Yeah,
And
they did. They definitely followed them.
and they give her 5 minutes. 5 minutes. To to basically, they gave her 5 minutes to make up her mind about, hey, come with us or stay with them. And one of the more interesting beats that I accidentally just breezed over, they find out Ahsoka's a Jedi.
Yeah.
Now, thoughts on this revelation and how they reacted to it?
So, okay. I kind of expected exactly the way that Trace and Rafa reacted because two things I got out of this. One, even Rafa said, well, whether you left the Jedi or not, you still act like a Jedi. But then also, in that same beat, Rafa then admitted, oh, well, you're the way a Jedi should be. And so I think, if anything, Ahsoka opened up their eyes to the fact that Jedi are not all just one flavor, that Jedi are different people.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, and so I think that they decided from the experience of knowing Ahsoka that they weren't going to label her the way that they previously had, and they obviously weren't going to blame her for something that she had no involvement with. So I think that they left it on really good terms. Ahsoka left her bike there. Trace said that they were still going to be friends. I was very happy with the way that turned around. Yeah. And I think that if they had spent any more time on it, it would have been too much. So I'm glad that we kind of left it the way it was. And I'm really excited to see what happens with Bo KAtan. And because obviously this is Satine's sister.
Right.
So I'm really curious. I'm very excited for these last 4 episodes.
Me too. Again, everything you're so on point. Like leaving the bike there. I liked the directing choice of right when they land, Ahsoka turns her chair and is like, guys, we can, and then they're already walking out. And she thinks, oh my God, they're pissed. They're not gonna, our relationship's done. And then by the time they walk out, they reveal all that, like, you're what a Jedi should be. Even though you're not a Jedi anymore. These are the conversations I find to be so interesting with Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars specifically. And I really hope we get a few more of them. But
I just want to say too, like, I know this is a debate that's been going around. I'm in a ton of fan groups, and the big debate is about the Jedi. And
what was
and
it?
I just
you
love.
cut out. Say it one more time.
Oh, the big debate is always about the Jedi and whether they're good, bad, and whether they stand for the right things. And that's why I love when we get a character like Ahsoka dealing with this, who is no longer a Jedi, because, and I mean, this might be a conversation for another time, but it just kind of proves to me that there were so many flaws among the Council, among the Jedis, among their code, and that you can have someone like Ahsoka who is still acts like a Jedi, but she has her own code that she's following, really.
Oh, I so agree. And it's funny, last night, I watched this really late. I didn't watch it this morning. I watched it last night. I got all snuggled up in bed. I had, like, my Star Wars stuff on, and I was just like, I'm going to watch. And I watched. And it's the best. I mean, we cannot praise this show enough. I know we were being a little critical of the storytelling this episode, but, like, honestly, I love this show. And like everything you just said, I wanted to get your thoughts right before we get into news. I wanted to get your thoughts on the idea that, wow, these 4 episodes, the primary antagonists, all women, and then they're gearing up these last 4, again, primary protagonists, all women. Like, how great is that? This show has accomplished something that the movies are slowly getting there, but this was such a great 4-episode arc with that, and it felt so natural, whereas I think in the movies and other areas of Star Wars, that is something that's felt very forced. Do you have any comments on that?
I mean, I just want to say this is one of the reasons why I love Rey as a character so much, is because she is a female character. They don't sexualize her. They don't, like, they don't show her the way that other females in other action films have been portrayed. But yeah, kind of bringing it back to Clone Wars, it is nice to see a group of females coming together and with different personalities, and seeing a group of females that are not portrayed like how do I say this? They're not portrayed in a way that they need someone else's help.
Yeah.
Or they're not concerned with fashion like that. I appreciate that, because I appreciate that so much when there's a focus on something other than appearance, when it is just who you are, and that is the important thing. And
so agree.
Yeah.
And not to even harp on this more, but like talking about the Bechdel test, where, is there a scene between two women where they talk about something other than a man? I think try the reverse. I try to find a scene in these 4 episodes where they even talk about a man in general.
Yeah.
It's really, it's something I think yet you have to recognize. And I like the characters of Trace and Rafa. I really do. I like their sister dynamic. I agree with you on saying, Trace, I feel like was a little too naive at the end, but I buy this relationship, and I would get emotional if they ever cross paths in the future again. Like they've set them up enough for me to really care about them.
And if we get another Rebel season, who knows?
Who knows? Getting into news real quick. This is our news and gossip. We have a little AfterBuzz TV news sound drop here. Guys, this week, Rosario Dawson, who was already cast as Ahsoka Tano a few weeks back, there are rumors that she signed a deal for multiple series. Now, that's not seasons of Mandalorian. That's multiple series. Meaning she could pop up in any other kind of live action or, heck, animated series with Ahsoka Tano. Now, what I wanted to talk to Rachel about real quick, doubt she would appear in anything animated because they already got Ashley Eckstein voicing Ahsoka Tano. But there are a bunch of other live-action Star Wars shows on the horizon, including the Cassian Andor series, which takes place between Episode 3 and Episode 4, as well as the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which, again, takes place between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. There's also a few other things rumbling here and there. I want to get your thoughts on maybe even just the character of Ahsoka Tano. What other series could she pop up in, live-action-wise, voiced and played by Rosario Dawson?
Her own series.
That's what I'm saying. High five. Boom. That is what I'm saying.
Her own series. But no, I'm really hoping that's what this is hinting at, is that she's getting her own. Now, the only thing, here's the thing. We know that about Ahsoka, the only, in terms of her, how long the character exists, we know that by the end of TROS, we hear her voice with all the other Jedi. So we know that by the end of TROS, she is no longer in the living. That is the only thing.
But wait, I'm throwing a challenge flag.
Yeah, so your challenge flag.
I don't know if that is. You're right.
Well,
from everything we know,
we did not hear Ezra's voice. He was one of the only few we heard. Kanan. We heard all the Jedi who had passed.
You're right. We did hear all the Jedi who had passed. Now, you can assume that she would have passed by then. I think even by age, because that's 30 years after Return of the Jedi. You can assume that something's happened. But I don't know if 100%. I don't know. I'm not quite there yet. But it's a good hypothesis. Good thesis.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. And that Ezra, because he's so much younger, it would make sense that he would be Luke's age, so he could still be around. And I don't know if Togrutas, if their aging is the same as a human, though, if they have a few more years.
If pretend we're getting an Ahsoka Tano series, live action.
Yeah.
What time period do you want it? Do you want it right after Mandalorian? So this is post Return of the Jedi. What time period do you want that series?
I think it would make the most sense in between Episode 3 and Episode 4.
I disagree because I think we already got some of that in Rebels. I think we already, she's in Rebels, and there is a conclusion to Rebels that if you haven't watched it, I don't fully want to spoil it, but
I've seen it, yeah.
But she's in it, yeah. And I would be way more interested. We know she's going to be a Mandalorian, which is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So she's there.
Ooh.
I'd
Here's
be game
another
for
thought.
that. Yeah.
How about, okay, so like I don't want to spoil this. We all know at the end of Rebels something happens.
Yeah.
If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. From that point, we never really got the resolution of a certain character's story. I'll just say that.
Right.
If there was a series that covered that, that would make sense. But my only thing is that I think that they're coming back. If the rumor is true about Rebels, then my guess would be that Rebels is covering that next.
Oh.
So I don't know if the Ahsoka series would be covering that.
So, and again, we both live in LA. There's something to say about how like the sausage is made, or even like the producing level of it. See, what I'm curious about, live action is different from animation. Both I love equally, but the thing with the live action series and why it was such a big deal that Rosario Dawson is playing her in Mandalorian is that is going to open a huge audience to this character who has never watched the animated show. You know, like my parents will never watch Clone Wars. They're just like, oh, it's a kid's show. They're not going to watch it. I'm like, guys, it's not. They're still not going to watch it. But they love the Mandalorian, so they're going to know Ahsoka Tano through the Mandalorian. The balance, the difficult quest that Disney has here, if they're going to do, this is all if they have a Ahsoka live action series, is making a show that doesn't require you to have seen these Rebels and Clone Wars and make it both interesting and enthralling. That is quite a task, and I actually don't think it's as difficult as we think it will be, because a lot of what we are curious to see about Ahsoka Tano's storyline, we're getting in these last 4 episodes of Clone Wars. We're seeing what happens playing out with Maul. And if we're curious about anything, I think, Ezra or Rebels related, if we get a season 2 of Rebels, or even in this Mandalorian season, we might get some of that cleared up. I would be so game to get a mini series, like a mini, I guess that is the normal series. I was going to say 8, but that's how long The Mandalorian was. So, like, 8 episodes. Maybe it's her and, like, an old Captain Rex, and you get the actor who played Jango Fett in the prequels to play him.
That'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah, and just kind of, like, fighting the forces of evil. See, I think it's wishful thinking, because we've heard no announcement of a live-action Ahsoka series. I think she's popping up. I think she'll pop up in the Cassian Andor or Obi-Wan series. I think that's
I could see that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that, especially Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan would be really cool. And if you read the Ahsoka Tano book, there are excerpts where they're talking about Obi-Wan and the desert planet. So I think that'd be awesome. Needless to say, I think it's just great news to hear that Disney's doubling down on this character. Not like they weren't before, but I feel like this past month has been all Ahsoka. Like, we have just gotten, like, her into Clone Wars, casting, Mandalorian, everything. Like, it's all Ahsoka Tano, and Rachel and I love that.
Yes, yeah.
Going into predictions for the remainder of this season, we can go back and forth here, but just what do you think? What's in store for Ahsoka these last 4?
So if you had asked me this right after we read the Ahsoka novel, I would have told you that there would be some kind of assignment from the Jedi Council that would have brought her to Maul. But obviously we know that is not true necessarily. But I think that when she gets there, I still feel like we're at least going to get an Obi-Wan encounter where somehow he's wrapped up in this too. Or just, I mean, I don't know. I would hope that somehow Anakin would be there too, but we know that that's probably not going to happen. But my just thoughts in general about what we're going to see is that these last 4 episodes, I would guess that we're going to get probably 2 or 3 that focus on Ahsoka on Mandalore, kind of scoping things out, and then we get that epic battle between her and Maul that almost kind of happens.
Yeah.
But then I would say that we probably get 1 episode that kind of brings us back to Coruscant, and we see maybe some extra details of what we did not see from episode 3 leading into the downfall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yo, okay. I want to get your predictions on run times for these episodes, because Do you think they can cover all this stuff suitably in, let's see, we got 4 episodes times 24 minutes. What's that equal? We got, what, an hour?
About an hour.
About an hour. Well,
Yeah.
it's like an hour 20, an hour 30? Yeah, an hour 30. It's about an hour.
If they do, I've been finding most of the episodes are like 20 minutes max, even if they say 25.
Yeah, they do have a long credit sequence. Well, yeah, that's a good point. I hope for at least one of these 4, doesn't have to be all 4, but one of these 4, we get a really long runtime. Maybe like 37, 40 minutes. Like just a longer episode. And I'm hoping, I have different hopes than I have predictions. Okay. My hopes are we're going to get what you were just saying. We're going to get like a Lion King 1.5 version of Revenge of the Sith. That's what I want.
That'd be amazing.
Wouldn't it? And instead of Anakin and Obi-Wan, we're getting Timon and Pumbaa, or Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex.
Well,
yeah. I hope we get that, and I hope what I predict is I think we're going to get an episode focused on Maul. I think we're going to get an entire, like, one that's just following him and really showing how he's still taking care of Mandalore. Because the thing is, where we left off with Maul in this storyline is he got his butt kicked by the Emperor, by Palpatine at the end, and he was just getting shocked. And Palpatine said he had, Palpatine said he had something in store for him and why he wouldn't kill Maul. So that's a question we need answered. Why is Palpatine keeping him alive? What is he using Maul for? Because we all know Palpatine is the mastermind behind all this, and Maul might think he has, his own free will. He's controlling what he's doing, but Palpatine he's playing with him. So
unless Maul was always a distraction, because part of the breakup, maybe Palpatine needed Ahsoka to be away to help with his plans. Ooh. And so he used Maul as a distraction to make sure that she was preoccupied.
Preoccupied with what he does with Anakin.
To make sure. Yeah. So to make sure Ahsoka was preoccupied, so that because here's the idea: is that Palpatine had to pull all the strings. He had to use Padme, in a way, against Anakin to make it seem like, oh well, if you go to the dark, then you can save her from dying. Palpatine probably put those images in Anakin's head. Yeah. Or at least, and then also to make sure that the other connection he had, because we see how strong the connection between Anakin and Ahsoka was, to make sure that would not
get in the
help
way.
Anakin.
Yeah, don't get.
Yeah, he made sure she was somewhere on the other side.
Well, so here's the question. So I need to find out the exact number of days, but I think Revenge of the Sith is like a week or 2. Like it covers a lot of time. It's not. I don't think it's like 2 days. I think it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
In the duration of time it covers. So, what I'm interested to hear is how they set up a narrative conveniently to keep Ahsoka occupied for those 2 weeks. Like, what is something? It doesn't necessarily need to be 2 weeks. It just needs to be up to Order 66. Because from what we know from this novel, she was on Mandalore for Order 66.
So I'm seeing a 5-day timeline for
5-day
decision. Yeah, 5.
Wow. Okay. So it must be 5 days. Wow.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because Padme's like, I'm pregnant, and then she's got like a belly at the end.
I know, but
I thought I was being conservative with 2 weeks.
I would have thought, if I wasn't looking this up, I would have thought longer. It's just because of her, how pregnant she is by the end versus the beginning. Unless, I don't know.
Maybe it's the core story, because at the end, there's like the montages of handing the babies off, and I don't know if that would have taken place within. Time gets a little confusing with space, but
unless it's because just maybe the clothing that Padme was wearing. Maybe she was trying to cover it up when she first told. And so that's why it didn't look obvious, because she didn't want anyone to know.
But 5 days, whether it's 5 days, 5 months, whatever, 5 days is a lot of time to keep someone occupied. I mean, even with this Bad Batch storyline, that was probably only 2 or 3 days, and that was 3 episodes. So what is the? I'm really curious how they're going to convey this timeline. Like, I want to know where we're at in Revenge of the Sith during some of these episodes. I think it's gonna be a really tightrope to walk. Like, this is not something we've ever seen storytelling wise in Star Wars before. We haven't seen things like overlap like this. You know, even in Rogue One, it ends right where A New Hope begins. Like, there's not an overlap. This is going to have an overlap. This is going to... It's Lion King 1.5. Like, the thing that's so fun about Lion King 1.5 is you're like, it's written so precisely to fit in the little scenes. I'm really curious to see how they do it. Do you have any prediction for... I know you think Anakin and Ahsoka are going to fight side by side, but that's the thing, is if they're doing this in tangent
I don't know.
I don't think they can be side by side.
I don't think they're going to fight. I don't think they're going to fight side by side, because a lot of this is from reading Ahsoka and knowing what the scene looks like in the prologue.
Right.
And knowing that it's not like, you know, this is kind of a spoiler for anyone who hasn't read the book, but knowing that when we see Ahsoka with Maul, she's definitely not there with Anakin. And
Anakin never goes to Mandalore. He never goes there. Like, it's always Obi-Wan. I think we have a better chance of Obi-Wan going there. The other thing is, with Revenge of the Sith, it opens with Grievous kidnapping Palpatine. Do you think we're going to see any of that?
I don't think they have time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, because that's a good question. It just brings up this issue of, you know, chronological events, because we don't know when exactly we are in relation to, I mean, we know that Anakin's away. We know that at the beginning of episode 3, he goes back to Coruscant. That's the only real, like, you know, relation we can make to this.
And we know he's on Coruscant now, because when they left, Trace, he was like sensing. Yeah.
So then, presumably, this is right after those scenes we saw with him returning.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's like, okay, well, how many? And I guess the real question is going back to the timeline of Revenge of the Sith. How long was it really? Because,
I think, well, what we know, I think we're kind of solving this right now as we talk. Anakin's on Coruscant, which I think he's there for good. I think he's there until that opening scene of Revenge of the Sith. I think that's a check mark. Yeah. And maybe...
See, I think that they definitely have to show him turning into Darth Vader, even if it's just a clip.
You think you think you need to?
I think that... So, this is the way I'm envisioning it. The very end of Clone Wars, we get, like, maybe not the last sequence, but, like, one of the last scenes is we see the helmet. We see that he's Darth Vader already. I feel like they need to, because that kind of ties it in to Rebels, and it ties it into... Yeah, I feel like they just have to, because... And it's kind of poetic. Because we spent this whole series with Anakin, and now, oh, here we go, he's Darth Vader.
So you think that final episode we're going to get Darth Vader? Wow.
I would guess there's going to be a time jump the way they did in Rebels.
All right, this is what I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess we get a time. You think a time jump, like a little montage.
Yeah. And also, I just want to throw this out there too, because I know that we're going to have people commenting on this. Everything I'm reading, someone said 5 days. Someone else said, well, no, 7 to 9 months because of Padme's pregnancy.
Yeah.
So then the real question becomes, is it that she was wearing a really big dress that hid the pregnancy? Or did we really see her full pregnancy? Because if we saw her full pregnancy, then seven-ish months probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a great point.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of minutia that it does matter, but I think we're gonna just need to see how it plays out. I predict the final episode is gonna be Ahsoka and Rex helping each other escape and kind of walking into the sunset. I obviously I think they go their separate ways, but like I think they help each other, and it's like peace out. And then I actually think instead of Darth Vader, This is a really out there prediction. I think we get Maul set up to where we see him in Solo.
That makes sense too. Yeah.
Yeah, we do need to wrap though, unfortunately. Thank you guys so much for tuning into our Clone Wars after show. I look forward to this every week. Love this show so much, and we're now getting into the meat of this final season next week. But it's been great so far. Rachel, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman or on my author Instagram account at Rachel Radner Author. If you are a fan of Outlander, the show, but also the books, I'm also on the AfterBuzz Outlander panel on Sundays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
That's awesome. And you can find me at Ryan Nilsen on Twitter, at Ryan Nilsen, Nilsen on Instagram. I'm on Star Wars News every 4 p.m. Thursdays, Pacific Standard Time on the Popcorn Talk Network. So please check that out, as well as the Better Call Saul after show, Mondays at 7 p.m. Guys, thank you so much. May the Force be with you. Please wash your hands, clean up, be safe out there, and stick it out with quarantine. Rewatch some Star Wars and Clone Wars and Rebels. See you guys.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.